Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire supported by Glenlivet Books. On Wednesday, the well-known historian and author Ramachandra Guha told me that the Gandhis must depart from politics immediately. They must separate immediately from the Congress party as well. Joining me today to refute and rebut that statement is one of the most senior members of the Congress party, former law minister, former foreign minister, and a member of the working committee, Salman Khurshid. Salman Khurshid, let me start by repeating to you Ramachandra Guha's precise words. In the interests of their party and of their country, the Gandhis should go now. Go not merely from the top leadership of the Congress, but from the party entirely. As a very senior congressman, how do you respond to that?
Karan, you know, I've spent a lot of time on studying paternalism. It's a bad thought for somebody who's a liberal, paternalism. And this sounds like the worst kind of paternalism. What is good for you, I know, and I will tell you. That's not a liberal way of life.
So you're saying Ramachandra Guha is being paternalist? He's imposing in an arrogant fashion his thinking on the Congress party.
See, I don't subscribe arrogance, etc., because for me that's irrelevant.
But paternalism?
The point is paternalism. I'm very clear. It is paternalism. This is not. I mean, if you get the gist of what he said and the tone in which he said it, it doesn't sound like a sympathetic suggestion. It doesn't sound like somebody who means good for you. It sounds like somebody who says, "I know what's good, and I will tell you what's good." Now, that kind of stick wielding against someone who's done so much for this country, unacceptable.
Would you go one step further? Would you say this suggests that Ram Guha has an axe to grind? Would you go that far?
It doesn't matter whether he has an axe to grind or not. I just reject paternalism. It doesn't matter why. I just reject it, and I believe any liberal person should reject it.
What do you think will be the impact on the Congress party of this statement by Ram Guha? He is, after all, one of the most highly thought of intellectuals in our country. He's a sharp critic of Mr. Modi, and usually he's been a great supporter of your party. So what will be the impact on Congress members of Ram Guha saying the Gandhis should go and go now?
Listen, I mean, I don't question his standing. I don't question his intellect. I don't question the contribution he's made to discourse and debate in this country. And that's all very welcome. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you accept every thought that he propounds. As far as the party is concerned, I'm not, frankly, I'm not quite certain that many people in the party, the rank and file as it were, would spend a lot of time on intellectuals like Ram Guha. But there are some of us who would want to understand why he's saying it and to respond, because too much of this kind of talk has hurt us. Okay. It's hurt us over the years, and I think it's important that it be responded to.
You're saying there are people like you who want to understand why Ram Guha is saying this. Let me then put to you the reasons that Ram Guha has given for saying the Gandhis must leave politics entirely. They must separate from the Congress party immediately. To begin with, he says, the Gandhis do not have a coherent ideology. And I'm quoting him, Sonia and Rahul claim to be principled secularists one day and promote soft Hindutva the next. They take credit for the free market reforms promoted by past Congress governments one day, but pour scorn on entrepreneurs the next. In other words, what he's saying is the Gandhis aren't absolutely sure what they believe in.
Well, I mean, this is his takeaway, but we are very clear. You can go back to ideas such as mixed economy. You can go back to the ideas of welfare socialism, etc., etc. Each one of them defines one dimension of Congress thinking, but also indicates some inadequacy in terms of how conditions have changed in the country. Now, we are very clear, and the Gandhis, as leaders of the Congress party, have always been very clear that we do believe in a structured welfare state. We can't. In a country like India, you cannot but believe in a structured welfare state. And that structured welfare state would obviously have to emphasize the social safety net. And that social safety net will have to come against the idea of a free market completely.
Your argument of straddling extremes works perfectly when you talk about the mixed economy or what you call the structured welfare state. What about the first point Ram Guha made, that on some days they claim to be principled secularists, on others they promote soft Hindutva? That's a criticism many people have made.
No problem. Of course people make that. People make that because Indian secularism must be understood. Indian secularism is not a bit like secularism being described in the West. That there is a complete separation between the state and the church, between politics and religion. India is not a religious society. India is a religious society, and therefore you can't separate.
Without doubt. But what about Rahul Gandhi going to temples claiming to be a Janeudhari Brahmin? What about claiming to be a Shiv Bhakt? That suddenly teeters into soft secularism.
No. Some people might think it's soft secularism. Some people might
Nehru would never have gone around saying I wear a Janeu or I'm a Shiv Bhakt.
But he wouldn't do that. But he did go to do Shnan at the Sangam, because for Nehru, as indeed for those of his family who follow in his footsteps, a lot of Hindu dharma has a lot to do with Indian culture, and there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong in somebody celebrating Indian culture.
But there's a big difference. Nehru doing Shnan at Sangam as a cultural event is very different to Rahul Gandhi going to temples claiming to be a Shiv Bhakt or a Janeudhari Brahmin. One is religious, the other is cultural. Rahul became religious.
I'm sorry. You could be a Shiv Bhakt as a cultural proposition. You can be Shiv Bhakt as a religious proposition. The divide.
You're saying Rahul was being a Shiv Bhakt culturally?
I don't know, but he's never said that I am a Hindu, and because I am a Hindu, I do not belong to the rest of India. Hinduism
he said the first bit, he clearly says he's a Hindu. He may not say I don't belong to the rest of India, but he's asserted a religious identity which his grandfather never did.
He may, because he does belong to a religious network or to a religious theme. He does belong to it, but he belongs to a lot more. Now the trouble with people,
you don't accept this is soft Hindutva in the present circumstances?
Then what is he, when he goes to a mazar and he covers his head, what is that? That's soft Islam? I mean, this is India.
Okay.
Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, this is all India.
So you're saying Ramachandra Guha, when he says, and I'm quoting him, Sonia and Rahul claim to be principled secularists one day and promote soft Hindutva the next. You're saying Ram Guha is just plain wrong.
I think he's completely wrong. I think you have to understand the reality of India. India cannot be a religious society, and therefore its leaders can't be religious. They will have to have an element of religion. Secularism for us only is about respecting all religions and giving space to all religions. That's what the Gandhis do.
Let's come to the second reason why Ram Guha believes the time has come for the Gandhis to leave both politics and the Congress party. He doesn't believe the Gandhis are capable of hard work any longer. And the example he gives is Rahul Gandhi during the recent Bihar campaign. Halfway through, Rahul Gandhi just left the campaign, disappeared to Himachal Pradesh for a holiday. And Ram Guha says this is proof that Rahul Gandhi lacks dedication, he lacks commitment.
I think this is a bit of an exaggeration. Every political exaggeration that you weren't there for every day of the 24 days of the campaign.
In the middle, that's not an
Not a holiday. Why do you call it a holiday? When I was at Oxford, we never called it holidays. We called it vacation. We called it time that you would go and reflect, time that you would go and do something else.
But Salman Khurshid, in the middle of an election campaign, when you believe it is vital and critical to win, you don't take a vacation.
You don't take a vacation. Like vacation is not a holiday. Again, please, I'm saying
you're playing with words.
You take a rest. You take a rest. You go back and reflect.
A rest in the middle of a campaign?
Of course, everybody does. I've done it.
At the critical stage, when in fact your presence could make a difference.
Who's saying that the president would have made a difference?
And do you know how many seats you ended up with?
He's
you did
going
miserably.
to decide. No. But listen, if he hadn't gone for a break, if he had stayed there and we hadn't got any more seats, then you would have said, well, because he stayed there, we didn't get any more seats. Now, this post facto arguments are not going to do.
You really seriously mean the defense you're putting up?
A what?
You really mean the defense you're putting up? First of all, you quarreled that it's a vacation or a holiday.
Yeah.
Then you're saying that if he hadn't taken a holiday and you'd still done badly, people would say it's because he didn't take a holiday. You really mean this?
Of course. I'm saying this only because I've heard it all the time. That he went in campaign, so we lost. He didn't go in campaign, so we lost.
So it's acceptable for senior leaders in the middle of a critical campaign to take a break and go to Himachal.
It may be possible that he said, you four go and handle this.
You ended up with 19 seats.
We ended up with 19 seats. We've also ended up with more seats in the past.
RJD says they failed to win because Congress let them down.
Listen. When people lose, they have different ways of reacting. And we could have said we lost because of them. They could say that we lost because of they lost because of us. I don't think that you should go by that. When we sit down and seriously look at what happened, where were the things that we had any flaws that showed up during elections? We work out a strategy for the future.
You're arguing that in fact taking a vacation, you insist it's a vacation or a holiday, was a legitimate thing to do. Rahul needed time to reflect. Rahul needed rest. Are you actually saying that a man who is 50, they keep calling him young, Mr. Gandhi, a man who is 50 cannot sustain a campaign in Bihar without a break, that this is a reflection of his energy levels or perhaps his health? He needs a holiday in the middle of a campaign.
Don't go back to a holiday. I'm saying anyone can take a break. Whether that break is justified or not justified.
Answer that. Is it justified or not?
How do I know?
No, but you must know.
No, I can't. When the person who is leading a campaign may decide that it is important to do something for 2 days or for 3 days, or take a break for 2 days or 3 days, get refurbished and go back. It's his decision. You can't keep dictating. You can't say, I've got a script for you, Mr. Gandhi. Now you follow this script and you're fine. If you don't follow this script, you're not fine. This is not acceptable. This will never be acceptable.
Okay, you've given your answer. We'll let the audience judge whether it is actually a response and a rebuttal of what Ram Guha says is a proof of Rahul's lack of dedication. But let's leave it to the audience. Let me bring to you the third reason why Ram believes, in fact, Congress under the Gandhis can never beat the BJP. He does a pretty telling comparison between Congress under the Gandhis and the BJP. He says the three most important people in the BJP are Narendra Modi, Amit Shah and JP Nadda. They are not related to each other, they are self-made, and it's their hard work that's taken them to the top. In contrast, the three most important people in Congress are Sonia Gandhi and her 2 children. They're related to each other. They only came into politics because a family member paved the way for them to do so, and they epitomize entitlement and privilege. And he says, Congress under the Gandhis can never, as a result, match up to the BJP and challenge it electorally.
Terrific, that's what he thinks. But if you want to press him hard and ask him what is the alternative in the Congress, he'll have to give you a list of 100 people who all belong to some family. I belong to some family. My father was a minister. I belong to a family. Sachin Pilot's father was a minister. He belongs to a family. Madhav Rao Scindia's son was in our party till quite recently and an important leader of our party. He belongs to a family. Look at any person. Look at Mulayam Singh Yadav. Look at Lalu Yadav. Look at Farooq Abdullah. Look at the Chautalas.
Can I reply?
Now, please do reply.
All the dynasty-based parties that you're talking about are actually nowhere at the moment. Absolutely nowhere at the moment. In contrast, there's hardly the same allegation that can be made of the BJP, which is why the BJP seems to be doing electorally well. Just look at the top 3. They have no relationship with each other. They're all self-made, and they struggle to get to the top. That is not true of Congress.
It may not be true of the Congress. It's not true of India as well. Now, to say that somebody is not in power today, but was in power yesterday and maybe be in power tomorrow, is not going to give you a valid case to say that dynasties are a negative influence on Indian politics. You may want greater social mobility. We will all support social mobility. Dynastic people also support social mobility. But the fact of life in India is...
The problem with dynasty is that it represents entitlement and privilege, something that India has been clearly turning its back on fairly decisively over the last 10, 15 years.
Has it really? Has it in Bollywood? Has it in media? Has it in sports? Has it in the military? Has India enough social mobility in general sense to complain about dynastic influence in politics. I'm sorry, these are wonderful things to say, but the ground reality
Bihar,
is...
look at UP, look at the Kashmir politics, look at national politics. Wherever there are dynasty-based parties, there are coming a cropper.
They're not coming a cropper. And if somebody come a cropper because you put them in prison for a year or for 2 years, all the dynasties were put in prisons in Kashmir, and then you set up another party and say they've come a cropper, that's not...
So you insist that the dynasty that is the image that Congress portrays to the country is not out of sync with the mood, and that a dynasty-led party can still beat the BJP. Because that's the essence of Ram's point. You're contesting it.
Yeah, I am, and I'm saying that he doesn't have enough data. By saying that we haven't won for a while, he cannot conclude that you cannot win till you have a dynasty.
Yeah, you can keep hoping to the end, absolutely.
No,
but
anybody can. I would have been happy to hear someone like Ram Guha showing me that when BJP came down to 2 seats, he said BJP should change its leader. I never heard anyone say that BJP should change Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Mr. Advani. Nobody ever said that.
Actually, by the way, what the BJP did when they came down to 2 seats in 1984 was change its leader. Atal Bihari Vajpayee stepped down as president of the party. LK Advani took over, and under the new leader, they went up to 98.
And
the position of 98, which is 179 seats.
All within the magic circle. The first time they had a change is when Mr. Modi actually pushed his way in and said, enough of you people. That's when he did it.
And then he got a full majority.
No, he got a full majority.
But you're arguing actually Ram Guha's point for him.
I am not arguing his point at all. I am saying that if he wants us to fashion ourselves in a alternative BJP, we are not going to do it. We have an alternative, and our alternative will come back. It'll come back, but we need time. Obviously, right now we are not.
Finally, Ram Guha says, and I'm quoting him, the association of the Congress with this crop of Gandhis works to the advantage of the BJP. So long as descendants of Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi lead Congress, the ruling regime can deflect criticisms of his policies in the present by pointing to mistakes of Congress governments in the past. In other words, Congress under the Gandhis provides credible cover-up and excuse for the Modi government to explain away its failures. It was much worse under Congress, they say every time. Oh, Congress began the problem.
And everyone knows that it was not worse in the Congress time, that they are the ones who are going down a deep hole. And they keep saying, now they want to reopen in the Supreme Court, they want to go and reopen the internal emergency. 40 years later, 50 years later, they want to open up everything. Now, if they don't have enough confidence in what they have to offer to the country today, despite the miasma they created of religion, then it's just too sad for them.
Let me give you 2 examples where Ramachandra Guha's argument works to perfection. Every time people accuse the Modi government of quashing freedom of speech, of mistreating journalists, they point to the emergency, which was much worse. Every time Kashmir is raised, they say the problem was started by Jawaharlal Nehru. Those are just 2 examples. Every time the problem in Ladakh, which is persisting at the moment, is raised, they say, but look at the way Nehru handled 62. In every instance, it seems, failures of the Modi government are countered by saying, but it was worse under Congress, or Congress began the problem.
Oh yes, and how long will that be? How long have people blamed everything on the British and the British government, and how long will these people blame the Mughal governments and the Mughal dynasty for what is happening in the country today, and how long will they blame the partition, and how long will they blame the Second World War? This is not the way countries move forward.
I agree, but it's working in Mr. Modi's instance. That's the problem. It shouldn't be happening, and it shouldn't happen for very long, but it's working, and because it's working, Congress becomes, in fact, the foil. You become the foil which Mr. Modi uses to explain away his problems.
Many people believe that religion, Hinduism, has a lot to do with Mr. Modi's success. But that's not true. It's only one factor. Many factors come together to give an election victory. It may be religion, it may be a particular idea of religion, it may be something else. All these factors have worked to give them victory. All these factors will transform, will change, but for somebody to insist that anything can happen only if we give up our leadership, I'm sorry, that's...
But what about the specific point he makes that as long as the Gandhis are in charge of Congress, whataboutery by Mr. Modi finds a credible excuse for his failures?
That's something that convinces him. It may
Seems to convince the country a lot
No,
of the time.
country may have been convinced for a different reason. It may have been convinced for a different reason. This country voted for socialism and Indira Gandhi, right? And then when they voted for socialism and Indira Gandhi, nobody ever said to the BJP, why don't you give up your ideology?
That was 71, we're now in 2020.
But you're just talking to me about emergency, you're talking to me about past. So when you talk with the Congress, you speak of the past, but when you talk with the BJP, you don't want to talk about the past.
Let me then put to you how Ramachandra Guha describes Sonia Gandhi's attitude to the Modi government. He says, she's like the Mughals with a divine right to rule. He says she sees Modi like Sher Shah Suri, an interloper who will one day disappear and the Gandhis will be back on the gaddi of power. And let me tell you, many people think that's quite an apt comparison. It's not one that works to Sonia Gandhi's benefit.
Why didn't he use the word Chanakya? Why couldn't he have said that she's Chanakya, that she has a...
But she shows no Chanakya-like qualities. That's the problem.
No, but this is how...
She shows a Sher Shah Suri-like quality in the belief that Modi is only an interregnum and will disappear.
I am sorry. You've talked so much about history. Go back to the history. Go back to 1971. Go back to what Indira Gandhi did to Bangladesh. Now they celebrate 1971. There's no mention of Indira Gandhi. But do you think that simply because they will not put up a picture of Indira Gandhi will disappear from Indian history? No. That won't happen.
Indira Gandhi undoubtedly is a person that will always imprint on Indian history, Indian politics in a huge way. Sonia is what we're talking about, not Indira. And the point being made is that Sonia tends to look upon Mr. Modi as an interloper, like Sher Shah Suri, who will disappear. She sees herself as the Mughal emperor with the divine right to be there.
No. I don't think that illusion really works. She has a right, and we all believe that she has a right to say that what has happened is something that must be reversed. Now we are responsible for reversing it. We are responsible for...
We meaning who?
The Congress Party. The Congress Party, as well as other political parties in this country who don't want India to go on the path that the BJP is taking us on.
At the moment, you show total inability to reverse it.
No.
You're losing steadily wherever you go.
Listen, when we won 3 states,
of which you've lost one since then.
Did we lose it because there was a free and fair election?
You lost it in the sense that it's no longer in your control.
I know, it's not in our control, but we did win those 3 states. Will somebody explain why we won those 3 states? We wait for the next 5 states to come this coming year, and we'll come back and have a discussion again. So Ramachandra Guha shouldn't write history
what happened
as
in
quickly as he's
2019 when you were shattered at the national level? You were reduced to 50 odd seats in Parliament.
Yes, I think it was deeply disappointing. It was deeply disappointing, but I believe the seeds of destruction of the present government lie in what they did in 2019.
You believe in the phoenix, do you? You'll rise from the ashes one day.
We will rise from the ashes, of course. And then if somebody says, well, he believes in the phoenix, he believes in a elitist bird, and that's the problem with the Congress, that's not the kind of discussion.
The phoenix is not an elitist bird, it's a mythical bird. It's a myth you believe in.
Is a myth that you believe in. You brought it out, and you thought it was important to talk about that myth, so we talked about that myth.
Ramachandra Guha also has a very specific criticism to make of Rahul Gandhi. He says that a man who cannot retain his pocket bara, Amethi, can never lead the Congress back to power. He calls him, in fact, a well-intentioned dilettante, and he says he's completely mediocre.
I see, look, what do you do? Where is the evidence for this? The only evidence
losing Amethi is the evidence.
Losing an election. Indira Gandhi lost that election, and you just said she's ingrained in Indian history, and she lost an election there. In her pocket borrow, she lost an election. These things happen, and we must understand that these things happen. Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee lost Gwalior. Let's not forget that. Now, this selective rewriting of history, if it's done by the BJP, I can understand. But if it's done by an intellectual, it's done by somebody who's respected for his thought process, that is a little bit disappointing.
He makes another point about Rahul Gandhi. He says the fact that people of talent have been leaving Congress is because Rahul is blocking their political advancement. And I guess the sort of person he has in mind is Jyotiraditya Scindia and Himanta Biswa Sharma.
Yes, I mean, those people leaving us is sad. It's cost us. It's cost us in Assam, for instance, Northeast. It's cost us. But you know, this whole business of why people leave. why their personal ambitions become larger than the interests of the party, etc., is something on which we have to take stock within our own party.
But was Rahul Gandhi a block to Scindia's ambition?
Listen, Scindia is a friend and has been a very, very dear friend. I believe...
Has been. It's in the past tense.
Well, because I mean, I'm not going to spend my evenings with him, given that he has a BJP ambience now. But he will remain a friend. But Mr. Rahul Gandhi was responsible for giving him enormous importance in the party. It's a fact. He may not have thought that was enough, but enormous importance was given to him. Well-deserved importance, but it was given by Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and I think you shouldn't take away where some credit is due to Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
We're coming to the end of this interview, Salman Khurshid. There's one more point that Ramachandra Guha makes, and it's not about the Congress, it's not about the Gandhis, it is about the Congress. He says, Congress is quite likely in the same predicament as the British Liberal Party. Two parties with a great past, a fantastic history, but no future. You may win a handful of seats in every election, but it's unlikely either you or the Liberals will ever come to power again.
Well, that's, let me just say that we will come back to power. I hope we are all around for him to take back what he said, for me to say that, look, I told you so, and for you to say, well, at the end of the day, whatever may have been the response to my interview on that particular day, today I have to say that the Congress is back, and I congratulate it.
Ramachandra Guha says that the reason why he believes the Gandhis must go now, not 2 years, 3 years later, but now, is because, and I'm quoting him, soon it will be too late to rescue even the rubble of our democracy and republic. In other words, if the Gandhis in particular are committed to the India Nehru created, go now, because your continuing is a threat to that republic surviving.
Well, let me just say that I don't know what the Gandhis would say to Ramachandra Guha, but I'd certainly say this with great respect, that I'm not persuaded, I'm not convinced, and I believe there are any number of people in our party who are not convinced about the urgency and the direction that he's pointing to. We have faith, we have trust, and we have
in the Gandhis.
Patience. Yes, of course we have. Say it very categorically. We have, and we have the patience. We will wait through the bad times that we have, and we are committed to getting back to good times again, for the country, for ourselves.
So your position is Ramachandra Guha can say what he wants, it's a free world, but we have faith in the Gandhis.
Absolutely.
We will stick with the Gandhis.
Absolutely.
And they will lead our party, Congress, back to power.
Absolutely.
And do you also add to that Rahul is perhaps the best person to be president of the party again?
Listen, a lot of people want him to be president.
Do you?
Right? Just listen. He hasn't given us a clear indication that he is willing. And therefore, I've put everything on hold, because if we do treat him as a leader, let us wait for him to give us some indication.
Let me put it like this. If Rahul were to say he's willing to return, would you want him to return?
Of course. Absolutely no question.
So,
absolutely.
If he's willing, Salman Khurshid wants him as president.
Yes. You want me to be counted first? I am. I stand up and I say I do. But if I respect him as a leader, I must wait for him to give me an indication.
And if he were to become president of the party, do you think he has the talent and the capacity to lead the party back to power?
Well, why else would he be president? Why else would we want him to be as president? Because we do believe that he has that talent.
And we
have that quality.
Do you believe he has the requisite qualities to be Prime Minister of India?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I believe that it's probably easier for him in prime ministership than it is for him in a difficult period in opposition, because we've hit
with your hand on your heart, you believe that Rahul Gandhi has the qualities to be Prime Minister of India?
Absolutely. I can say that without any fear of contradiction.
Salman Khurshid, thank you very much for agreeing to this interview. Take care, stay safe.